Hi, everyone, and welcome to the CXO conversation happening at IFF 2026 right here in Kigali. My name is Divine Muragijimana, and I'm your host for the day. And with me is a marketer turned tech founder, and her name is Ebi Gatimu, founder of CladFy. I think I said that correct. Ebi, welcome.
Thank you.
So, usually this conversation, we try to get what's behind the founder. So, I'm curious about, because I know you from the days when we were doing marketing work together, and then somehow kind of blinked, and I'm seeing you in news. You are now a founder and CEO. Tell us a little bit about the journey and what got you to where you are today.
Right. Great to be on your podcast, Divine. So I actually started my founder journey like a long time ago. I think I was always the friend that's always selling something, right? But fast forward, I got into the tech space. And I think that's around the time that we met, where I was working with like an agency, like an AI agency that powers brands by connecting them with influencers.
Yeah.
So how I transitioned out is I was actually quite happy at that job, making a lot of money. And I was taking stock at the end of the year. What have I done with my money? Where have I spent it? I know, generally, I've done this and this and this.
Yeah.
But then you sometimes you get the feeling that you could have done more with your money, but you can't quite figure out where, what you missed, right?
Yeah.
So I was taking stock of my personal spending. And actually, the journey to this business started here in Kigali.
Oh,
so wow. I met my co-founder here in Kigali at a similar founders event. And at the time, I was actually just taking stock of my, personal spending. And someone, I had spreadsheets. So I'd taken my mobile money statements, my bank statements, I'd exported them to Excel, and I was trying to make sense of my money. So someone actually pointed out this founder, my current co-founder, and said, that guy has actually written a script that can do what you're trying to do on Excel, on spreadsheets, within minutes. And I was so curious, and, it actually worked. So we kept in touch, and I started thinking around, okay, so this tool, who would benefit from this? Who looks at cash flow and mobile money statements and bank statements for a living?
Yeah.
And then we landed on lenders. So about 12 months later, I left that job, and I was like, we're going to turn this into something. Yeah, and that's where we started.
And here we are.
Here we are.
What has been surprising about your journey? Because I think when I'm talking about, because I left, of course, since then, we've both left our jobs. But the most surprising thing about my journey has been how unlinear, right? If somebody asks me, what's the most surprising? It's like how unlinear this experience of founding a business is. What has been your most surprising take?
Yeah, I'd say, no experience is wasted. Actually, I didn't actually set out to be a marketer either. I'm actually a trained accountant. I have a finance background. I did audit for a couple of years. I was in KPMG for a few years.
Okay.
And then I decided, okay, I don't think I want to deal with this forever. Then I was like, I want to get into marketing. That's what I'm passionate about. I love thinking about consumer behavior, thinking about how to get them to buy something. That's what really sparks me.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into marketing. But then now that I've got it back into the finance side of things, it's very surprising that, you pick from all those experiences. And as a founder, one of the things that has surprised me, I think I was always one of the co-founders in a team. But I wasn't the CEO. And, it used to be like, oh, this is cool, this is fun. Until you're the CEO and you're not working on some of the things that give you so much joy. You're working on all the hardest problems of the business, the ones that no one wants to work on.
Yes.
So that has been quite surprising because, as the CEO, you're dealing with, a lot, right? So that has been surprising because I thought now I'm the CEO, I'd get to pick what I'm going to work on. Oh no. Yeah.
You don't get to choose your day. You don't get to choose the problems you're solving. But the interesting is you get to choose the mission. So I'm curious about yes, there is the journey of having that challenge of, so you took stock, you realized there's an opportunity, you started a business. But in this bit, how big is this problem when you think about? So there's the lenders, right? You work with the lenders,
Right.
but the journey started with you. So
Right.
as an individual, so take myself for example, how big is the problem on personal financial management, just accessing the personal financial data? How big is that problem if you contextualize it in the African context?
Right. So CladFy is on a mission to increase the capital that's flowing, particularly to the informal sector. Yeah. And how we're doing that is to empower lenders to be able to have the insights and the software and the data that they need to make informed credit decisions.
Yeah.
Because then when they do that, they're able to stay in business. You lend money, someone pays back, and you stay in business, right? But one of the things that's emerging is that credit is flowing to this sector, but then these insights sort of stop with the lender, right?
Yeah.
So that's how it's tying back to where I started. These insights are very important. Your spending habits. So lenders can tell from your data what you spend on, what's important to you. Do you have a family? Do you have savings? Are you over indebted? And, as an individual, you just spend money. You don't really take, very few people actually take that information seriously.
Yeah.
But it can really, change your life, transform your life, where you're wondering, I don't have money to invest. But if you were to look at your spending, analytically, you can see I can cut back on some entertainment here. And, actually show you how, because this is your money, right? And you have, this data is yours. It's just that it's not packaged in a way. So that's one of the things that we're focusing on this year. Like how do we increase the capital that's flowing, to the segment, but also channel that data back to the individuals. So that they can be able to use it for their own, to grow their own, wealth.
Yeah. And how do you see that impacting if that, if you succeed, how do you see that impacting the individual, for example? So take me, for example, I get my data. How do you see that impacting, especially those, because in the US, right, I always refer like my accounts in the US, they're well organized. I have 5 accounts that are connected.
Oh, wow.
I can see all my data. I can see how much money is going in. If I spend too much, there's an app somewhere that's telling me you have spent too much,
right.
Which is very different from when I'm on this side. So how do you see this impacting like an individual, like the impact on that individual's life?
Right. So here the data is very fragmented. You have some of your data sitting on mobile money, some is sitting in your bank, some sitting with your SACCO if you're saving there, some sitting in cash, right? So there's no holistic view. Everything is everywhere. So we can't really tell, what it is, where you are with your money. And if you can't tell that, you'll keep overspending. You'll never have anything to invest. And it's actually very sad. I'll sit with, friends, even guys in the middle class, not just low income Kenyans. You'll sit with guys in the middle class. They're earning, hundreds of thousands of shillings, but they have no investments. They have no savings. They're, if today their job is done, they'll literally have to move back home. And it's quite sad. So it starts with just awareness. How can you just get aware of your situation? Then you can begin to change it. There's a lot of, payday loans. But that's because you're not managing your money.
Yeah.
But if you're able to tell where your money is, where you can cut back, then you'll have money to save, to invest, and to even live a higher quality life. So that would be the impact.
That would be amazing. I mean, I have, with all the cutbacks, the companies, we're just having, we're going through a season, at least in the last 3 years, where people are losing their jobs and everything.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of panic, right? So I feel like when you do succeed, this will be very, very impactful. But let me pivot a bit to starting, right? Not very many people have the courage to start a business after they've had a very cushy job. I will tell you from my experience, that has been the most, I think I didn't know how much fear comes with starting again, and how much courage you actually need to start a business, how much to move from being very comfortable where you have a check at the end of the month, there is someone who is responsible for paying you at the end of the month, to being the one responsible to paying, right? And having the courage to actually start a business. How if I was somebody was watching and they wanted to get the courage or they're looking for a courageous moment, what would you tell them? In truth, right? Like the good, bad, and ugly.
Right.
What is your good, bad, and ugly about transitioning from being a very cushy executive to being, let's say, messy founder, right? That messy founder journey.
Right.
How has that been? And what would you tell somebody who's going through that feeling of, should I? Should I not? What should I know? What do I need to start?
Right.
Yeah.
I'd say when you're starting out, like, actually, you shouldn't judge yourself for the fear is standard. So actually, everyone, because it's the unknown, you know, it makes it uncomfortable. But I think the top advice I'd say is just start before you're ready. You know, when you overthink it, you won't start. Like, honestly, personally, I always say, if I knew how hard it was going to be, I probably wouldn't have done it. In fact, in my next life, I'm like, I'm not choosing this path. I'll choose a different path, you know. It's really hard, honestly. And, you know, someone has, you know, real cause to, you know, to be afraid, particularly if you have dependents. Yeah. So personally, I have a family. So it was a tough decision. But it was something I always knew I wanted to do. So it was just a matter of time. And the longer you take, the harder it becomes, because the older you get, the more responsibilities you have, even to yourself, your image, your quality of life, because you will suffer. You will suffer emotionally, financially, or spiritually. You'll get better because you'll get very close to God.
You get close to God.
You get close to God.
It's morning prayers.
But I think it's just start before you're ready. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. But realistically, if you have a job, I usually highly advise to not quit your job. You know,
start when you're working.
Yes. So then you can, you know, have, you know, when you're worrying about the business, when in its, you know, nascent stage, customers, you know, learning, you don't want to be worrying about your basic needs. Yeah. So if you want to quit, go ahead, but at least make sure you have
a cushy,
you know, some funds to just tide you over the first year, because you will really struggle if you don't have that. And you can't even think when you can't pay rent, you know, when your kids are at home staring at you, you won't be able to even innovate. So it's all, you know, fun and games until you have to pay for stuff. So I always say, if you have a job, do your job. And there's dignity in a regular job. I've worked jobs, you know, for a big chunk of my career. So jobs are not the enemy. In fact, they are your friend when you're starting a business. Because no one funds small businesses like that. Just small ticket loans, but very few have access to investment. So they're the exception. Yeah. So you want to be able to invest in your own business. And be able to own it so that you can control the direction. And you can do that very comfortably when you're in a job. Then when your business can pay you maybe half of what you make, then you can be able to jump. Yeah. So try and find ways to de-risk the journey, because if you do it on hard mode, I did it on hard mode. I do not recommend it at all. Where you jump and you go all in, it helps because you have no choice. But it's also really rough. Yeah. If you don't have to do it, don't do it that way.
Okay. Yeah. Most rewarding part of the journey, though?
Yeah. So I think the most rewarding part is, there's so many rewarding bits, but I'd say just feeling like you're the captain of your ship. Yeah, that's very important to me, independence. Yeah. Being able to control what I love. I love my purpose. Like my purpose is, even as a person, I love putting money in people's pockets, whether it's through gifts, whether it's, guiding them to something that they don't know about themselves. I can help them make some more money. That's what I love to do. So this is feeding really well into that. And I'm able to take a step back and see whether my work is really, fulfilling, and I get to do a lot more of that. Even though I do some uncomfortable things, that's usually very, fulfilling, the independence. And then as a mom, one of the things that I've loved is just the flexibility around being able to choose my hours so that I can be around my kids a lot. So my mom used to work in the bank and she was not around a lot. Yeah. So I think for me, I feel I've really loved being able to spend a lot of time with my kids when they're home, and I work when they're not there, and can be able to schedule that. So that flexibility and independence has been the best thing about it for me.
So essentially what you're spending this time on your own terms, right? Defining what those terms for your time is. Yeah. So let's see, let me summarize what I'm hearing. I'm hearing You're going to be afraid, so just do it anyways.
Yeah.
Build while you're working. What else? Love your passion. So love the purpose that you're in. And then that building has given you a sense of living life on your own terms, which is like, if we are ever so lucky, that's what everybody really actually, I think, is striving for, being able to define the terms of these years that you're given on earth. All right, Abby, I think that's a wrap. But before we go, coffee or tea? Tea. All right. You're a Kenyan, of course.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much, Abby. And thanks, everyone. So it's a wrap.